So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday from Sight and Sound Technology. I'm Stuart Lawler, and joining me today is my colleague Sharon Lyons, and we're delighted to be back with you for another session. Now, today we're talking all about power features in the JAWS screen reader, specifically the speech and sounds manager and the skim reading tool. And I think it's fair to say that when it comes to JAWS, there are many features that we kind of might know the name of, but maybe we don't use them very much and we don't really know what they do. And when we're, as screen reader users, we're always thinking about efficiency and the quickest way to do things. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, I got an email from Matthew Horspool, who's a freelance JAWS trainer, a power user, and has been for many years. And he thought it would be interesting to show some features that he finds really helpful, and indeed that he's been showing to some of his students. So we were delighted to take Matthew up on his very kind offer. Matthew, of course, is well known, I think, in the community in the UK and indeed here as well in Ireland. We're going to hear from Matthew in just one moment. Before we do that, though, if you'd like to get in touch with us today, you can raise your hand by pressing Alt and Y if you're on a PC, or if you're doing that on a mobile app, find the raise hand button. And you can also chat by pressing Alt and H, or finding the chat button if you're on a mobile app. Matthew has a presentation of about 40 or so minutes, and we're going to hand over to that in just a moment. And after the presentation, we will take your questions. We are going to try to do this within the hour if we can. So we would ask you to please keep your questions as brief as you can, especially if you are going to raise your hand. And we will do our best to get to as many people as possible. So with all that said, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to our presenter for the day, Matthew Horspool. Matthew, over to you.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Stuart, and good afternoon to everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to see some familiar faces and some not familiar faces. Thank you, everybody, for turning out to this session, and I hope you'll all get some benefit from it. As Stuart said, I'm going to be talking about two features in JAWS primarily. I'm going to be talking about the Speech and Sounds Manager and the Skim Reading Tool. I might also throw in a quick mention for the inconsistency checker, because that's also called the text analyzer. That's also a very useful feature and won't take too long just to quickly talk about what that does. So essentially, there's three scenarios in which this presentation might be useful to you. You've either got to proofread a document that you have written yourself. You have got to proofread a document that someone else has written, i.e., in the workplace, or if you're working collaboratively on a document. Or you need to review a document, generally that someone has sent to you, but I suppose you could review your own documents as well if you wanted to. And yeah, I'll just run the whole presentation and then I'll take questions afterwards. So things that we need to just talk about quickly before we go into actually demonstrating things. We're going to be working in Microsoft Word. I have to be honest with you, I haven't tried these things out in Google Docs and so on, and I certainly haven't tried them out in Excel or PowerPoint or anything like that. I think probably this is predominantly going to be a Microsoft Word focused session, and possibly, if you're very brave, a Microsoft Outlook focused session. Some of these tools do definitely work in Microsoft Outlook when you're composing an email, perhaps not so readily when you're reading an email, but they might still be useful. The other thing we need to square up is some vocabulary, which I will try and use the official JAWS vocabulary as we go through this session, but it may not be immediately apparent what it is that I mean. We're going to be talking a lot about things that we would normally call the font, the size, and the style, or possibly the type form. So we're going to be talking about the font, which is what JAWS calls the font name. So the font name is things like Courier and Times New Roman and Arial and so on and so on. The font size speaks for itself. That's just 10 point, 12 point, 16 point, 36 point, whatever it happens to be. And the bold, italics, underline, superscript, subscript, all of those sorts of things, this is what JAWS calls attributes. What we might call style, but actually style is a slightly different thing. So an attribute is bold, italics, underline, and so on and so on. We might also talk about colour. I don't think I'll be talking about colour a great deal in this session, although the concepts that I talk about will relate to colours. But if you are going to be working with colours, you need to understand that there's a foreground colour and a background colour, and I don't think I need to go into any great detail about what those are. That should be fairly self-explanatory. The significance of making a differentiation between font name, font size, and font attributes is that for font name and font size, there's only one of them. You can have a font name of, Courier or Times New Roman or what have you. I mean, fine, whatever. That's fine. But you can't have something in both Courier and Times New Roman at the same time. You can switch between them throughout a document, but you can't have it in both Courier and Times New Roman at the same time. Similarly, you can't have it in both size 10 or size 12 at the same time. It's either got to be one or the other. But with attributes, you can have things bolded and italicized, or bolded and underlined, or italicized and underlined, and that's going to be important as we go through this this demonstration. So let's open up Microsoft Word and do some demonstrating. Before I do that, I will just share my screen. I'm going to assume that the screen has been shared, and I'm going to assume that if it hasn't been shared,
screen sharing meeting controls,
somebody's going to tell me that it hasn't been shared. And I'm also going to assume that you can hear my sound. We did test this earlier on. And
I can hear all of that, Matthew.
Marvellous. So. Thank you, Sharon. And I'm going to just go into a blank Microsoft Word document. So I'll just press the Windows key,
search box edit,
and type Word
app,
and press Enter.
Opening Microsoft Word. Document 1 word, 1 lines or more. Print, edit.
And I just need to put some text into this document. And so I will write a heading. I'll write JAWS webinar, new line.
JAWS webinar.
And I'll do Control-Alt-1 to make that a heading. And then I'll just type some text. I am writing a quick paragraph showing how... And I'm going to turn italics on at this point.
Italic on.
JAWS deals with fonts and attributes, and I'm going to turn italics off.
Italic off.
And the presentation will last about, I'm going to turn bold on.
Bold on.
40 minutes, full stop.
Bold
I'm going
off.
to turn bold off. That's just given us some text that we can play with throughout the rest of this session. I do have a longer document that I'll come to afterwards, but I just needed, to give you some text just to follow along with. So I'm reading back through this document. Fine, if I just read this.
Top heading level 1 JAWS webinar. I am writing a quick paragraph showing how JAWS deals with font and attributes, and the presentation will last about 40 minutes.
There's no sign of whether italics have been turned on, whether bold has been turned off, any of this. There's just no sign of that at all. I could, if I wanted to, navigate by character or by word and figure all this stuff out.
I am writing a quick.
And if I do insert F or JAWS key with F on that.
11 point, black on white, calibri, normal style, line spacing, 1 lines, paragraph formatting, aligned left, outline level, body text.
It gives me a whole load of information, including the fact that it's not bolded or italicized.
Paragraph showing how JAWS deals. Italicized, 11 point, black on white, calibri.
So that's italicized.
With font and attributes. Italicized, 11 point, and 11 point, black.
That's not italicized anymore. But you can see already, if you've got a document that's several pages long, that's going to be very tedious. One way we could very quickly just go through and find out, and find the next occurrence of some bold or the next occurrence of some italics or underline or anything else. It also looks for things like runs of spaces and opened and closed symbols, is using the text analyzer. And I'm not going to spend vast amounts of time on this, but it's sufficient to understand that it works in the same way as quick navigation keys work. So when you turn quick navigation keys on and you press H to move to the next heading, the cursor will move to the next heading in the document. And similarly, if you press M for the next spelling mistake or N for the next comment or so on, and T for the next table, the cursor will move to the next of those. And you can add Shift to go backwards. The text analyzer or the inconsistency checker uses not a quick navigation key. It's actually just Windows Alt I, I beg your pardon, Alt Windows I. But it works with the same principle as quick navigation keys in that it's just moving the cursor. So if I press Alt Windows I now,
font change bold on 40.
It said font change bold on 40. and it's put the cursor somewhere.
4.
I'm not quite sure why it's put the cursor on 40, actually. What did I write?
About 40 minutes.
Oh, there we go. That's right. So that the bold started on the word 40. And if I press Alt-Windows-I again, it will find where the bold finishes.
No more inconsistencies.
Except it won't, because the bold was the last thing that I wrote in that document. If I do Shift Alt-Windows-I.
Font change Calibri light 16 points bold off steel blue 4. JAWS.
Okay, so that's found where the bold was turned off. Yes, and it's actually found where the italics was turned off. Perhaps if I do Control Home, it may be slightly easier to see.
Heading left. I am.
If I press Alt-Windows-I now.
Font change italic on. JAWS.
There we go. It's found where the italics started. And if I press Alt-Windows-I again, it will find where the italics ended.
Font change italic off. Attributes.
So there's a lot more that we could talk about. I'm not going to, because we're a bit sort of short on time, and perhaps there's an extra webinar that could be done maybe next year sometime if there was particular interest in the text analyzer tool. But I did want to highlight it as just a very quick way of being able to get through. You know, if you just wanted to check where bold started and finished and italics started and finished, then it's worth doing.
Matthew, could I just, sorry to interrupt, but could I just ask you to maximize your windows just at
You
the
can,
recording
there you
things
go.
in there? Thank you.
Yes, I do apologise. Thank you for pointing that
I'm much
out.
happier now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. I always forget to maximize windows. The biggest limitation of the text analyzer, and in fact the biggest limitation of a lot of the tools that we're going to be using, is that it can report inconsistencies that it's found. It can report formatting that it's found. It can't report formatting that it hasn't found. And this is quite important in that if you're going through, you know, what you couldn't do is if, let's say you want all of your headings to be in bold. Let's not talk about the fact that we ought to use heading styles for a moment. You need all of your headings to be in bold. You could use the text analyzer or the skim reading tool that we'll talk about later on, and you could find that the only things that are in bold are headings, and therefore, fine, that's worked. But if there was a heading that accidentally hadn't been put in bold, the text analyzer or the skim reading tool wouldn't tell you about that. So you would, you know, if you really wanted to be absolutely sure that everything had been covered, you would need to move line by line through the document, or, you know, do a say all or paragraph by paragraph or something, and use the feature that we're going to talk about next, which is the Speech and Sounds Manager. So the Speech and Sounds Manager allows you to adjust the way that JAWS tells you about things. It's actually very powerful, and there's a lot about the Speech and Sounds Manager that we're not going to talk about today. But it allows you to adjust the behaviors of control types, so you can configure, you know, if you don't want JAWS to say button, you can make it play a sound every time there's a button instead if you wanted to. You can configure control states. So, for example, whether a checkbox is checked or not checked. You know, it could use a different voice if you wanted for a checkbox that was checked versus a checkbox that wasn't. And then for our purposes, font names, font sizes, font attributes. It can do colors. It can do indentation. It can do various other things that come along from time to time, you know, HTML attributes and things like that. And the behaviors, you can either ignore it, which is most of the time what JAWS does. You can make an announcement to say that something is there, so it can say bold on, bold off when it finds things. You can actually speak the bolded text in a different voice. You can make it play a sound, or you can speak the text in a given language. You probably don't want to do that for bold and italics and things, but for example, for color, if you were doing the French translation book or something, you might have the French in red and the English in ordinary color, and therefore you might want the red text to speak in French, so it would speak it with the correct accent. And that is something that you can do if you need to do that. I personally actually have a very complicated speech and sound scheme that I've disabled for today, which uses sounds for controls and states. So like buttons have sounds, and checked and not checked have sounds, and it uses voices for everything else. For now, I'll actually use the more simple default schemes just to show how they work. So there's a whole bunch of pre-assigned schemes, and you can look for these if you press Alt, Windows, and Alt, Insert, and S. Alt and the JAWS key and S. It will bring up the Select a Scheme dialog box. So I'll do that now, and you'll see the list of default schemes that appear.
Select a scheme dialog. List 1, list view. Word Classic 23 of 23.
So I'm on Word Classic. That's at the bottom of the list. There is Classic and there's Word Classic. The difference, incidentally, between Classic and Word Classic is that Word Classic doesn't announce superscripts and subscripts, and normal Classic does. So Word Classic is switched on for Word,
WhatsApp.
and Classic tends to be switched on for everything else. I do apologise for these notifications that are popping up in the background there. I thought I'd turn those off, but never mind. If I go up to the top of the list and find where Classic is...
Classic attributes and font info, 5 of 23.
Okay, so there's a whole host of these. There's Classic attributes and font info.
Classic attributes, 6 of 23.
That will just announce the attributes, whereas Classic attributes and font info will announce the attributes and the font, whereas attributes will just announce bold, italics, and underline, and so on.
Classic attributes, font and color, 7 of 23.
As you can hear, that will also announce colors.
Classic with quotes, 8 of 23.
That is a bit unreliable, actually, but it will give you a different voice every time there's text in quotation marks. That may be useful. So there's a whole host of Classic schemes, and they make announcements. And then there's a whole host of proofing schemes.
Proofreading attributes and font info, 17 of 23.
The main difference between the Classic schemes and the proofreading schemes is that the proofreading schemes change the voice. They don't make an announcement, they actually just change the voice completely.
Proofreading attributes, 18 of 23. Proofreading attributes, font info and color, 19 of 23. Say all text only, 20 of...
And then we get down to the say all ones. So just to quickly run an example of that, if I go up to the Classic schemes...
Classic attributes and font info, 5 of 23.
I'll use the...
Classic attributes, 6.
I'll just do attributes for now, and I'll press enter on that to switch into that scheme.
Scheme, classic attributes, edit.
So now if I read this document through...
Top, normal, heading level 1 JAWS webinar.
It's announcing the fact that the bold has been turned off. It's saying it's normal, and I'll just press the down arrow.
I am writing a quick paragraph showing how italic JAWS deals with font and attributes, normal, and the presentation will last about bold 40 minutes.
So you can hear that it's announcing where the italics and the bold are, and it will do that at any level, actually. If I press Control up arrow to read the paragraph.
Normal, I am writing a quick paragraph showing how italic JAWS deals with font and attributes, normal, and the presentation will last about bold 40 minutes.
Okay. So this is fine. It's reading what we want it to read. It's perhaps a little bit intense. If I was reading a long document and it kept telling me that bold was on and bold was off and so on, I think I would be a bit distracted by that after a while. And I would lose track of whether it was actually, if it was a long passage of text in bold, I'd lose track of, am I actually in bold or am I not in bold, or how does that work? So if we contrast that with how the proofreading style works,
Select
or proofreading scheme works, I've just done Alt Insert S again to go in there.
Proofreading attributes and font info. Proofreading attributes, 18 of 23.
I'll switch to proofreading attributes and see how that works.
Scheme, proofreading attributes, edit. Heading level 1 JAWS webinar.
So I'm just doing Control up arrow, and I'll do Control down arrow now to read that paragraph.
I am writing a quick paragraph showing how JAWS deals with font and attributes, and the presentation will last about 40 minutes.
So you can hear that actually we're using the read voice most of the time, but for the italicized text, it's switched into the grandpa voice, and for the bolded text, it's switched into the Rocco voice. So this works character by character, and it works word by word. So if I do Control right arrow to move by word...
Am writing a quick paragraph showing how all caps JAWS.
And it's told me that it's in all caps. That's a customization that I made that I forgot to undo. So I'm just doing Control right arrow, and you can hear as soon as it hit the italicized text, it went into the grandpa voice.
Deals with font and attributes and
now it's gone back into the normal voice. And if I wanted to check whether the space was in italics, I could just left arrow at this point.
Space. SETUBIRTTA space.
So I've gone all the way over the word attributes, and I can see that the space before attributes is italicized. But if I go back forwards again,
ATTRIBUTES. Sierra.
We're still in italics at the moment, but
space.
That next space is back in normal text. So you can be quite precise with this. You can work out, which is in bold, what's not in bold. Have we accidentally got a new line in bold? If I keep going...
And the presentation will last about 40 minutes.
We've gone back into bold.
INUTES period. Blank.
But what happens if I press enter and start typing again? I don't know whether the bold will carry on or not. Just type, this is a second paragraph.
This is a second paragraph.
And the bold voice has stuck. So I can see, in fact, that the bold has carried on. And I can see that very easily. I've not had to type it and then, go back and press insert F or whatever I've had to do. It's still speaking in the bold voice. Therefore, the bold is still on.
Cap T. Tag blank period.
And
blank.
all I need to do to get rid of the bold is just select that
This
and
is
unbold it.
Bold up.
And then it will go to the normal voice.
I am writing a quick paragraph. Presentation will last about 40 minutes. This is a second paragraph.
So most of the time, actually, this may be all you want to do. But you might decide that actually I don't particularly like the bold voice. It's doing the right sort of thing, but actually the Rocco voice is just driving me a bit mad. And actually, I'd quite like the Sandy voice or the Shelley voice or something that's a bit more distinguishable for the bolded text. So how do we do that? Well, we could edit the speech and sound scheme, but we probably don't actually need to do that. The speech and sound scheme, the proofreading schemes, are using a voice alias called bold voice. And so we can just go into Settings Center and edit the bold voice that way, which is what I'm going to do. So if I press JAWS key with 6, which is the insert key with 6, or the caps lock key with 6, and it's 6 on the number row, that will take me into Settings Center.
Word JAWS Settings Center dialog. Search box edit. Control+E. Computer Braille.
And I probably could do it in Word, but it's safer to do it in the default file. So I'll press Control-Shift-D to load the default file.
JAWS Settings Center default all applications.
And I'll tab across to the tree view. I could search for it, but it's just as easy to find it in the tree view, really.
Tree view 0. User closed. 1 of 26.
And I'm looking for voice aliases.
Voice aliases closed.
There we go. I'll open that branch of the tree view with the right arrow.
Voice aliases open. 1 item.
Down arrow
WhatsApp.
once to where it says
1. Customize voice aliases. ... 1 of 1.
Customize voice aliases, and I'll press the space bar on that.
Voice aliases dialog. List 1. List view. All caps. Voice current voice pitch plus 20%. 1 of 35.
Okay. So the all caps voice. Now, what we've actually got here is a list of all of the voice aliases that exist in the current voice profile. Now, I don't really want to talk too much about voice profiles here, but if you know about voice profiles, you need to know that if you have several voice profiles, the voice aliases are stored per profile. So if I'm editing the voice alias in this profile, the edits that I've made won't apply to the other voice profiles. You'll have to switch to a different profile and then edit the voice aliases separately for each one. Most people, I think, probably don't need to worry about that, but if you've understood that line, then fantastic. Somewhere in this list, there will be a bold voice, I think, if I just down arrow a few times.
Bold voice Rocco 2 of 35.
There we go. Exactly there. Bold voice is Rocco. And if I tab around, there'll be an edit button where I can change that.
Add button Alt+A. Modify button Alt+M.
Okay, it's actually called a modify button. That's fine. Let's press the space bar on the modify button.
Voice aliases dialog. Modify voice alias dialog. Voice alias name. Edit. Bold voice Alt+N.
So what's it called? It's called bold voice. We could change this, but we probably don't want to change it because the speech and sound scheme is looking for a voice alias that's called bold voice. But you'll notice that it's now talking in the bold voice. So any change that we make at this point is going to be reflected straight away. We're going to be able to preview what change we're making. So I'll press the tab key.
Voice alias person. Combo box. Rocco 5 of 9. Alt+E.
And it's set to Rocco. The top choice in this combo box.
Current voice 1 of 9.
Is the current voice. This is important because, and I'll come back to why it's important later on, but basically it's because you don't necessarily have to change the voice completely. You could use the current voice and just slow it down or speed it up, or just decrease or increase the pitch. So current voice is the top choice. We actually, I think for the purposes of this demonstration, do want to change the voice completely. So I'll just down arrow a few times.
Read 2 of 9.
Shelley
3 of 9.
I'll leave it on Shelley. That seems like it will do what we need to do for the purposes of the demonstration. I'll tab along.
Voice alias pitch left right slider 80%.
Alt+P.
So if I wanted Shelley to speak a bit higher, I could adjust that slider.
Voice alias speech rate left right slider 31%.
Alt+R.
If I wanted Shelley to speak a bit faster or a bit slower, I could adjust that. The significance of this is that it's all relative. So my current speech rate is 75. If I adjusted it so that she was speaking at rate, 65, but then latterly reduced my speech rate, my master speech rate, down to 65, the voice alias would adjust with it. It would go down to, say, 55 or something. So it's always stored relative to the current speech rate. And that's actually all there is to do in this dialog box. So there's an OK button, and I'll press the OK button.
Default all applications, JAWS settings, center dialog, voice aliases dialog, modify button, Alt+M.
And I'll just tab through and find another OK button.
Delete button, Alt, OK button. Tree view, customized voice alias.
Spacebar on there, and I can just press Alt F4 to exit the settings center.
JAWS settings, center dialog. You have made changes to default all applications as settings. Do you want to save them? Yes button, Alt+Y.
Yes, I do want to save them, so I'll press Enter again.
JAWS Professional.
And I've landed back on the JAWS window. If I Alt-Tab, I will get back into my Microsoft Word.
Document 1 word, 1 lines or more. Document 1 word, edit.
And now if I read, I'll find that or hopefully we'll find that the bold text that previously spoke in the Rocco voice is now going to speak in the Shelley voice.
This is a second paragraph. I am writing a quick paragraph showing how
JAWS deals with font and attributes.
and the presentation will last about
40 minutes.
Okay, that's worked. We've got Shelley for bold, and we've got Grandpa still for italics. Okay, so far we've got two extremes. We've got an extreme where we say we want a different voice for everything, and we've got an extreme where we say we want an announcement for everything. But what happens if you want a hybrid approach? What happens if you want, most of the time you're looking for bold text. So you're quite happy to have a voice that announces bold text. But all these other voices, because there's also a voice for underline, and there's a voice for superscript, and there's a voice for subscript, and all this sort of thing. All of these other voices, actually, they're just a bit confusing. So what you want is for underline and italics to be announced, and just to say italic and underline. But for bold, because there's so much bold in your document that actually you really do care about bold, you want that to be announced in a different voice. This can be done by modifying the speech and sound scheme. So far we've modified voice aliases, but we've left the speech and sound scheme intact. Now what we want to do is modify the actual speech and sound scheme to achieve what we want to achieve. To do this, I'm actually going to start with the attributes, with the classic attributes scheme, because the classic attributes scheme will give us most of the behavior that we want. If you're going to modify a scheme, you want to start with something which has got most of the ingredients of what you want in place. So in this case, we want most things to be announced as a message, and only the one attribute, which is bold, to be announced by a voice. So the classic attribute scheme will do all of that, except it will also announce bold as a message. So let's go into Settings Center and modify the classic attributes scheme to, instead of give us a message for bold, give us a voice for bold. So we'll go back into Settings Center with JAWS key and 6.
Word JAWS settings, center dialog, search box, edit, Control+E.
We'll do Control-Shift-D to modify the default file again.
JAWS settings, center default.
And we'll go tab to the tree view and down to speech and sound schemes.
Speech verbosity, close. Speech options, close. Speech and sound schemes, close.
I'm just pressing S to get there. I'll right arrow to open that branch of the tree view.
Speech and sound schemes, open, 3 items.
There are 3 items, and I happen to know that it's the last item of those 3 that I want. So I shall down arrow 3 times.
1. Scheme description, modify schemes, ...
I'll modify the scheme. So I will press the spacebar on the modify schemes button.
Classic modify schemes dialog. Select scheme combo box. Classic 2 of 22.
Now at the moment I'm modifying the classic scheme. I actually want to modify the classic attributes scheme. So I'll down arrow.
Classic with flows to and flows from. 3. Classic attributes and font info. 4. Classic attributes 5 of 22.
Okay. And the next option along will actually give us a description of that scheme.
Classic attributes modify schemes dialog. Scheme description. Read only, edit, Alt+R.
Which I'm not going to read, but I could if I wanted to. And the next one following that is an edit button.
Edit selected scheme button, Alt+E.
So we'll press the edit button on here.
Modify schemes, classic attributes dialog. Classic attributes edit scheme dialog. General page, scheme description, edit, Alt+D.
Now, this is a big dialog box, and I really don't have time to go into everything on this dialog box. It's huge. I really would recommend actually spending a lot of time. If you've got, half a day to play with some JAWS settings, I really would recommend going in and having a play with this. I wouldn't recommend changing too many settings at once, because there's a lot of them, and you might find yourself getting very overwhelmed very quickly if you do too much in here. But I mean, it really is an absolute, amazing place where you can just change so much of what JAWS does and really quite rapidly improve productivity. Just to give you a sense, if I shift tab, I'll get to it's a multi-page dialog. I'll get to the tab control.
General tab.
And I'll just right arrow through all of the tabs across this dialog box.
Control type tab. Control state tab. Attributes tab. Font name tab. Font size tab. Color tab. Indentation tab. Mist tab.
So there's a whole bunch. You can hear, what you can do in this dialog box. You can adjust the behaviors for all of those. In this case, I want to adjust the behavior for attributes, so I'll go left a bit.
Indentation tab, color tab, font size tab, font name tab, attributes tab.
And I'll press the tab key and we'll see what's in this list box.
List 1, list view, default speak attribute using message voice 1 of 14.
So the default, if no other rules have been set, what is JAWS going to do? And what JAWS is going to do is it's going to speak the attribute using the message voice. So it's going to say bold, italic, underline, and so on. The default case, as I say, used whenever there is no other rule that it could defer to. If I down arrow, there are some other rules, but they all are quite dull and do the same thing.
Deletion speak attribute using message voice 2 of 14. Editing lock speak attribute using message voice 3 of 14. Grammar speak attribute using message voice 4 of 14. As comment speak attribute using message voice 5.
So I don't really need to go any further down this list. I happen to know that bold is actually not set up in this list because bold just uses the default case. So we need to add a rule that says if the text is bolded, rather than telling me that it's bold using the message voice, actually speak the bolded text using the bold voice. So I'll tab. There should be an add button here.
Speak attribute radio button checked 1 of 5. Alt plus U. Select voice alias button Alt plus S. Text edit Alt plus T. Add button Alt plus A.
The add button is what we want. So I'll press enter or the space bar.
Edit scheme classic attributes dialog. Add attribute dialog. Choose attribute bold checkbox not checked Alt plus D.
Now, this is important. You remember what I said earlier on about how you can have multiple attributes at the same time. You could have text that is both bolded and underlined, or both bolded and italicized, or you could have 3 or 4 attributes at once. The way that the Speech and Sounds Manager deals with this is there's a whole series of checkboxes. Bold is the first one, and it's the one that I'll check, but you'll see as I tab down, there's a whole load of other checkboxes. Let's assume that you want bolded and italicized text to be treated in the same way. So you want, you've got a single voice, it's called the emphasized voice, and you want all of your bolded and italicized text to be spoken with the emphasized voice. What you should not do is create one rule and check both of these checkboxes, because what that will do is it will find text that has both of the attributes on it. So if I checked bold and italics, it would find text that was bolded and italicized, but it wouldn't find text that was bolded, or it wouldn't find text that was just italicized. It would only find both of them. So you would need to create 2 separate rules, one for bold and one for italics. I just want to create one for bold, so that's fine. I'll check that box. That I'm on the bold box already.
Checked.
And I will just tab down so you can see what else there is.
Choose attribute italic checkbox not checked. I'll choose attribute underline checkbox not checked. Choose attribute strikeout checkbox not checked. Choose attribute highlight checkbox not checked. Choose attribute graphic checkbox not checked. Choose attribute double strikeout checkbox not checked. Choose attribute superscript checkbox not checked. Choose attribute subscript checkbox not checked. Choose attribute shadow checkbox not checked. Choose attribute outline checkbox not checked. Choose attribute emboss checkbox not checked. Choose attribute engrave checkbox not checked. Choose attribute small caps checkbox not checked. Choose attribute hyperlink checkbox not checked. Choose attribute dotted line checkbox not checked. Choose attribute spelling error checkbox not checked. Choose attribute grammar checkbox not checked. Choose attribute invalid checkbox not checked. Choose attribute insertion checkbox not checked. Choose attribute deletion checkbox not checked. Choose attribute revised checkbox not checked. Choose attribute proofing error checkbox not checked. Choose attribute as comment checkbox not. Choose attribute editing lock checkbox not. Choose attribute as details checkbox not checked. Choose attribute hidden checkbox not checked. Choose attribute mark checkbox not checked. Choose attribute suggestion checkbox not checked. Next button Alt plus N.
There's a whole bunch of them, as you can tell. Actually, JAWS has been steadily improving that list for quite a while now. I was using JAWS 2020 with somebody the other day, and that list was quite significantly shorter. So this list is growing all the time, and it's worth periodically looking back at it. But for now, we've got a next button. So let's press the next button.
Select behavior dialog. Behavior speak item radio button checked 1 of 5. Alt plus S.
So what do I want it to do? If I speak item, that is going to just give me an announcement. The actual radio button we want is, I think, the next one down.
Behavior speak item text using voice radio button checked 2 of 5. Alt plus V.
Yeah. So speak item text will actually speak the bolded text using a voice. Speak item will speak the fact that it is bolded using a voice. And then there's various other options down here.
Behavior play sound radio button checked. 3. Behavior read item text in different language radio button checked. Behavior ignore radio button checked. 5 of 5. Alt plus I.
So I want it to speak text using voice.
Behavior read behavior play sound behavior speak item text using voice radio button checked. 2 of 5. Alt plus
And
V.
I'll tab.
Next button. Alt
There's
plus
a next button.
Select voice alias dialog. List 1 list view. All caps voice current voice pitch plus 20%. 1
I'll
of 30.
choose the bold voice.
Bold voice Shelly. 2 of
There
35.
we go, which I've modified earlier on.
Finish button. Alt.
And we'll find the finish button.
Modify schemes. Classic attributes dialog. Classic attributes edit scheme dialog. Attributes page. Attributes page. List 1 list view. Bold speak text using bold voice. 1 of 15.
And there's the first rule there, bold, speak text using bold voice. Okay, so that's done. I can just, what can I do? I think I probably need to OK
What's
out
that?
of here now. So I'll shift tab a couple of times
Attribute cancel but OK button.
and press the space bar.
Default all applications JAWS settings center dialog. Classic attributes modify schemes dialog. Edit selected scheme.
Okay, so at the moment, we're working with the classic attributes scheme. The next question is, do I want to save the classic attributes scheme or do I want to give it a different name? And I think probably I want to give it a different name. So I will go to, instead of save, I'll go to save as.
Save selected scheme button Alt plus S. Save selected scheme as button Alt plus A.
And I'll press the space bar there.
Modify schemes classic attributes dialog. Save as dialog. File name edit combo classic attributes.smf Alt plus N.
And I will just call it, let's see,
Here right here.
I'll call it sight and sound, and I'll press enter.
Default all applications JAWS settings center dialog. Classic attributes modify schemes dialog. Save selected scheme as button Alt plus A. Sight and sound modify schemes dialog. Save selected scheme as button Alt plus
Okay,
A.
so I've now got that, and I can keep going, and there'll be an OK button.
Create new scheme but delete selected scheme. OK button. JAWS settings center dialog. Do you want to make sight and sound the active scheme for default all applications? Yes button Alt plus Y.
I actually don't. I only want to make it the active scheme in Word, so I'll press no. But I could quite easily press yes here. It wouldn't do any harm.
No button Alt plus N. Preview modify schemes ... 3
And
of
I'll just close out of Settings Center.
1 lines or more. Document 1 word. Edit.
So you'll note that I didn't make it the default scheme. So currently, if I read through,
Heading level 1 JAWS webinar. I am writing a quick paragraph showing how JAWS deals with font and attributes, and the presentation will last about
40 minutes.
it's still doing that. But if I do Alt Insert S now, or Alt Jaws key S,
select the scheme dialog. List 1 list view. Proofreading attributes 19 of 24.
I should be able to find, if I press S,
Say all text on. Say all text. Sight and sound.
the
4 of
sight and
20.
sound scheme. And if I press enter on here
Scheme sight and sound. Edit.
and read the same text through,
Heading level 1 JAWS webinar. I am writing a quick paragraph showing how italic JAWS deals with font and attributes, normal, and the presentation will last about
40 minutes.
normal.
okay. So you can hear there that it read everything in the normal voice with messages apart from bold, which it read in the bold voice. So that's a very brief overview of the Speech and Sounds Manager. I would love to talk more about it because it really is a fabulous thing, but I don't really have time. I've only got probably about 5 minutes left of the presentation. And the last thing I want to talk about, which won't actually take very long, is the skim reading tool. To talk about the skim reading tool, I'm actually going to go into a long document that I was sent earlier on this week. So I'll close out of this document.
JAWS word. Run.
And I'll just quickly find
F.
the long document that I need.
Sally. Item. Participant at partner information. Opening Microsoft Word.
Which is
1
not
lines
that
or
one,
more.
I do apologize.
Sally. Partner report 16. Opening Microsoft Word. Partner report 16 to 30. Docs Word. Partner report 16 to 30.
This is
docs.
a research report. This report was about some research that I took part in actually, but it's all anonymized and it should be okay to work with. It's a report on how blind people, how blind musicians in particular, respond to artwork. So I have the report on screen. If I do Control End,
Page 31. Bottom. Normal.
you can see that it's
Running apps.
31
1 lines or more.
pages long, and I'll just check that that window is maximized. I think it is.
Page 1.
But if it isn't, then Sharon will tell me.
It was, and it's not now.
It was, and it's not now. Oh
Sally,
dear. Right, let's.
1 line.
How is it now?
It's kind of up the top. Yeah, Windows up or something.
How is it now? Is it still not?
Yeah, still.
System menu.
There you
Leaving
go.
menus.
Yeah,
I'll do
there
it
we
that
go.
way.
That's the
There
one
we
I
go.
go to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's done.
WhatsApp.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Matthew.
So, this big long report, I happen to know in this big long report that I have headings and I have subheadings, and I know that my headings are in bold and my subheadings are in italics. I know this because I know the report. I could browse through the document with JAWS and try and find that, but it would take a long time. Knowing this information, I can pull out all the headings and the subheadings in this document using the skim reading tool, because what the skim reading tool does, it's essentially a very sophisticated find feature. You can either make it find the first line or sentence of a paragraph, or you can make it find occurrences of text, or you can make it find where text has certain attributes or colors. And what we're going to do is make it find where text has certain attributes and colors. So the keystroke for it is Control Shift Insert down arrow, or Control Shift JAWS key and down arrow. This comes about because JAWS key and down arrow is say all, and we're sort of doing an abbreviated version of say all. So if I do Control Shift JAWS key and down arrow, I'll get into the skim reading dialog and we'll have a quick explore through.
JAWS version 2023.2305.108. Alt plus T. Skim reading dialog. Use rule type. Read first line of every paragraph. Radio button checked. 1 of 4. Alt plus T.
Now again, this is probably something that would be worth exploring in your own time. At the moment, if I was to press enter here, it would do exactly what it said. If it would go through every paragraph and it would read the first line of every paragraph. It's not really what I want to do here, but is useful if you just need to quickly review a document.
Use rule type. Read first sentence of every paragraph. Radio button checked. 2 of 4. Alt plus T.
That's the same, but it will read the first sentence of every paragraph.
Use rule type. Text rules apply for reading. Radio button checked. 3 of 4. Alt plus T.
This is a bit like a find feature, as I say. This would allow us, if we wanted I want to find every sentence that has the word blind in it. I could use the options here. I could type blind into the text to find field, and it would retrieve every sentence with the word blind in it. But the one we're interested in is the last one.
Use rule type. Attributes and color rules apply for reading. Radio button checked. 4 of 4. Alt plus T.
So we could use this to say, give me everything that is red. We could use this to say, give me everything that is red on a black background. Or we could say, give me everything that's bold or italics. So let's go through here.
Rules history. Combo box. New. 1 of 1. Alt plus R.
So if you do this regularly, actually it will build up a list of the rules that you normally use. I have reset this to default, so there's currently nothing in this dialog box. We just want to create a new rule. That's fine. I'll tab through.
Color or attribute rules. Text color. Combo box. Star. 1 of 514.
Text color star. That means anything. So the foreground color or the text color can be any color you like.
Color or attribute rules. Combo box. Star. 1 of 514.
That I'm not convinced spoke properly, but this is the background color, and again it's set to star, which means it could be anything. This is actually quite useful because quite often when you're looking for red text or blue text or what have you, you don't actually know what the background color is going to be. So you can set the foreground color to red and the background color to star, and it will see, red on anything. Whereas if you set the background color to black or the background color to white, it would only find red text on white. So if the background color changed, it would no longer find all that red text. We actually want to find any color because we're not looking for a color at all, so we'll just leave it where it is and we'll keep tabbing.
Color or attribute rules. Bold checkbox not checked.
And here's our list of attributes. The key difference between here and the Speech and Sounds Manager is that you can check multiple attributes and have it work. So I will check the bold attribute.
Checked.
And I'll tab.
Color or attribute rules. Italic checkbox not checked.
And I will check the italic attribute.
Checked.
And what that will do is it will find any text that is bolded, any text that is italicized, and any text that is both bolded and italicized. It will find all of them, whereas in the Speech and Sounds Manager, it wouldn't. There's a whole bunch of them. I'll quickly keep tabbing through.
Color or attribute rules. Superscript check. Color or attribute rules. Shadow. Color or attribute rules. Outline. Speak unit. Combo box. Lines containing text rule. 1 of 3. Alt plus U.
Do I want the lines, the sentences, or the paragraphs? I quite like sentences, actually, but many people prefer lines. I can see why, but I will set it to sentences.
Length. Sentences containing text rule. 2 of 3.
That's fine. And I'll tab across.
Skim reading indication checkbox checked. Alt plus I.
This checkbox is well worth checking. It will play a sound as the skim reading is going on. And for long documents, skim reading takes a long time. So I would highly recommend keeping that checkbox checked.
Start skim reading button. Alt plus S.
So start skim reading, and the next one along.
Create summary button, Alt+Y.
It's the create summary button that I'm going to press, and I will press that now and let it start skim reading. The reason why I pressed the start summary button rather than the start skim reading button is that the create summary button will skim read the document, and it will put all of the results in the virtual buffer, and there will be links that I can click to take me back to that place in the document, which is quite useful. Whereas start skim reading will literally just read. It won't do anything else. There's no way of getting back to what it is that I'm looking for. I'm not actually sure though that this has worked. I think I've found a bug. I'm just going to try that once more.
Skim reading results.
And if it doesn't work, then I'll go to questions. But I am going to try.
Skim reading dialog. Color or attribute rules. Text color combo box. Stop. Rules history. Bold italic */.
Okay, it's kept my rule from last time. I'll try
Use
creating
rules
that
help
summary
button.
again.
Close button. Create summary button. Alt+.
That seems to be working more effectively. Visually, what it's actually doing is scrolling down line by line by line by line, and it's pulling out everything that matches those certain attributes. And it will give me, as I say, in the virtual buffer, it will give me a whole list of results with links. And so I might be on page 1 of the document, but when I go to the list of results, if the result is on page 15, it will take me straight to page 15, and it will put me on where the bold text is or where the italicized text is. So let's say you're in a situation where somebody said, can you have a look at this document for me, and can you pull out, look at all of the bold bits and tell me whether I've written it properly or not. That would be where that feature would come in useful. Now, I have to be honest with you, this worked every time until I started demonstrating it on this webinar. It's now not working terribly well. I can see that it's finished skim reading, but I can't actually see any text in the results viewer. And I'm not entirely sure why. I think Sharon
it is there, Matthew. Yeah, sorry.
It is there.
Yeah, the links are there.
The links are there, but Jaws, for some reason, doesn't want to read them. But I wonder if we should take some questions at this point. I'll try and debug this and see if I can give you a sense of what it's doing at the end. But yeah, for some reason this just isn't speaking today, and I'm not sure why. But yeah, let's take some questions while I try and figure that out.
Matthew, can you hear Stuart?
I can't hear Stuart, no.
No, seem to have a technical issue with the mic at the moment.
I was just about to say, I wasn't sure whether you were waiting for me or I was waiting for you.
And I was stuck on mute. Anyway, bear with us, everybody. And yeah, if you want to ask a question, it is Alt-Y, I think.
Are you hearing me now, Sharon?
There you go. Yes.
I'm not sure what's wrong with my headset, but yeah, Alt and Y for raising hands.
Yep.
We are tight on time, so if anyone wants to raise your hand, we'd love to hear that. And again, just to say a big thank you to Matthew for an absolutely brilliant presentation.
Fascinating.
I think in some ways we've only scratched the surface, so we'll have to do more of this. So Sharon, is there anything in chat that you want to reference whilst we're looking at raised hands?
Just people saying thank you. And Catherine was looking for a list of commands, but I've just put them in as I've just put them in the chat, just the main commands for the skim reading and speech and sounds manager.
Thank you. Yes, if you look in the JAWS help system, if you I think probably go to the JAWS window, do an insert J, and then press F1. There's some quite good keystroke references in there, and there's some good help topics on the speech and sounds manager and the skim reading tool, so it's worth looking through those. Okay. Did you have more chat, Sharon, or can we take a raised hand?
I was just going to say there's some stuff on the Surf's Up stuff as well. There's a page on screen reading, and there's a page on Speech and Sounds Manager. Would you recommend them, Matthew?
I haven't looked at them for a long time, but
Yeah,
the
they
Surf's
might be
Up
a bit
stuff
old.
in general is very good. So
Yeah.
it would definitely be worth looking there. If, I can't remember where you get them now. If you go to the help menu and then there's a web resources option in there, and Surf's Up is in there.
I just
somewhere,
Googled
I'm
it.
sure. Or just Google it. Yes.
I Googled JAWS skim reading and it came up as the first result. So that's helpful. Yeah.
So I've got a raised hand from Richard Hughes. So Richard, you should be able to unmute yourself, and I'm sure Matthew would be happy to hear your question. So you just need to respond to the request to unmute.
Sorry, it was an accident there. Richard's just saying.
Oh, it was an accident. Oh, apologies, Richard. Okay,
You're just testing, weren't you, Richard?
that's no problem. Okay, I don't have any other raised hands. I think people are trying to just come to terms with all the information you've given, Matthew.
There's a couple here,
they're
Stuart. Sorry.
digesting. Oh, I didn't see any raised hands there. Sorry.
I've got two here. I've got Jessica Beale. Do you
Oh,
want me
there's
to go ahead with
Jessica.
that?
I just see Jessica. Yeah.
Ah, yeah,
perfect.
there you go. There you
And
go.
there's Derry as well.
Shall I allow to talk or yeah?
Yeah.
I think let's do that. Let's bring
Yep,
some people
there we
in.
go.
I'm not managing to get these skim reading results to speak, so
It
I
looks
think
great.
perhaps- yeah, it looks fantastic, doesn't it? I think perhaps I need to
Okay.
restart my computer or something, but I'll do that after the webinar and see if it works any better. But yeah, we'll just take some hands for the last few minutes, I think.
Hello, I think
Hello.
you
Hiya,
unmuted
Jess, we
me.
got you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hiya, I'm here. Good. I wasn't sure if I was or not. But hi, Matthew. That was brilliant, really useful. I don't suppose you would know this. I know you said at the beginning it was for Word documents. Would it work on WordPress on the internet, do you think? Or do
Oh,
I just need to
gosh.
test it?
Some of it probably will. Some of it probably won't.
Okay.
Like the speech and sound stuff probably will work on WordPress. The skim reading
Yeah,
stuff.
that was more the one I was
Yeah,
thinking of.
I wouldn't dare risk skim reading on WordPress.
Yeah,
but yeah, the
but
speech
to
and sound
see
stuff probably
if things
would.
are bold or italics when you're
Yeah.
trying to put something online.
Yes,
You think
it
that would probably work?
I think that would probably work. Yes.
Okay, that's amazing. Brilliant. Thank
Thanks,
you.
thanks,
no
Jessica.
problem.
Thanks for your question. We might go to the Irish jury then, Sharon. We have we have Derry and Christina both in Dublin. So we go to Derry first. So Derry, we should be able to unmute. I think we had you first.
No, yeah. Hello,
we go.
Hiya,
housekeeping.
Derry, we got you.
Hiya,
Hey,
Matthew.
Derry.
Great. Hiya, Sharon. Great meeting. Was great webinar. A couple of questions about the color, and if you wanted to say stuff that had a red coloring, would that work in Excel as well? Somebody say any of the text in red is new. Can you be able to just bring the text from an Excel spreadsheet to identify just red color text? Would that work in Excel?
So again, the skim reading tool probably wouldn't work. I haven't tried it. You could try it, but I mean, it might go horribly wrong. What I tend to find with the speech and sounds manager in Excel, if you're just left arrowing and right arrowing through cells, it doesn't tend to work so well. But if you press F2 to edit a cell, then it seems to do a better job of working. So it probably wouldn't be very good for just picking out which cells are in red and which cells aren't.
No.
But if you had to check, have I made, if you were supposed to be putting text in red and you needed to check that it had worked, then you probably could use the speech and sounds manager in Excel for that, yes, as long as you did an F2
and
to
also
edit it.
The vocalizer voice, if you're just using vocalizer Tom instead of eloquence and you don't have Rocco or Grandpa, would that change, would the voices change and you're reading bold, would that change to say Ava? Would you set that up?
You could set it up that way. It would obviously depend which vocalizer voices you'd got installed.
Yeah.
And I did actually try to test that earlier on, and I couldn't get that to work either. But yes, in the past, I've had vocalizer voices installed, and yes, I've managed to use, say, Kate for normal text, and Daniel for bold text, and Serena for italicized text, and so on. So yes, you should be able to do that.
And last thing, and it's nothing to do with the webinar, your Windows sounds, the Andrew Louis sounds. How'd you get them in Windows 11? I have
Send
the
an
program.
email to Stuart, and I'll talk to you off list about that. It was a bit of a hackery process to do it.
I'm interested in that as well. Okay.
I have them. Andrew sent them, so I do have the program. They are installed. I just can't seem to get them activated.
No, I had to unzip them and manually add them in, and I can send you some more. If you email Stuart, we'll be in touch.
I will. I'm going to email him this
Terry.
second.
Right.
I'm going to email him
now.
I'm going to hound him, the poor fellow. Listen, thanks very much.
Thanks, Terry. Good to talk to you as always. Take care. Thanks, Emil. Okay, we're going to go to Christina, also in Dublin. So, Christina, I think you can unmute yourself. I think we have.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Hi, Christina.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. This is probably just me being a bit dim, but I have tried to change it so that JAWS on my work computer here will announce the font and the attributes. But I've hit enter and it says switch to font and attributes on the scheme, but nothing is happening. What am I missing?
I don't think you're missing anything. There's two things that possibly could have happened.
Yeah.
Are you doing that from within Word?
Yes.
Of all? Yeah, okay. So that's not the problem, but that can sometimes happen. Alt Windows S, I think, will only change the scheme for the currently running application. I have seen it where it hasn't worked straight away. I've seen it where I need to do Alt Insert S. Why I keep saying Alt Windows S, I'm not sure. But I do that. I find the scheme, I press enter, it doesn't work. And I either have to Alt Tab and Alt back a few times, in Alt Tab and Alt Tab again, or possibly sometimes even unload JAWS and restart JAWS. I have seen
tried restarting it and it doesn't seem to want to do it either.
When you change your other JAWS settings, are they holding?
Yes. Yeah, they are.
Then there's a real serious problem, isn't there? But I don't think
Excellent. Fantastic.
I don't think you're doing anything wrong. If you know, I mean, perhaps reach out to Sight and Sound Support or reach out to Stuart.
Yes, it is possible because it's not my home computer; it's my work computer. I wonder if it could be a little.
I wondered, was anything tied down where you restricted?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Well, I was wondering this. There might be some permissions problems. That it might also be if you can get us your JAWS version. It might be that there was a bug in a particular build of JAWS that got fixed in a subsequent build of JAWS or something like that. It'd be worth checking that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll have a play with it, see what I can do. It sounds really useful, particularly for some of the work that I do.
Yeah, and
it
I
could
don't
be really
think
handy.
you're doing it. The other thing you could do, if you go into the settings center, where I went in to find speech and sound schemes and modify schemes. The first item, there were 3 items. The third one was modify scheme. The first one was what the scheme was. So if you go to speech and sound scheme and down arrow and then just space through all of those schemes and try changing the scheme there and see if that takes any more effectively than the Alt Insert S.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. The only other thing, now this is probably not, you don't have to answer this because it's a little bit off topic, but I'm just wondering, in terms of a Braille display, is there any way to get that to show font attributes if you're using UEB, or is that a totally different question? That's probably a totally different question.
I don't think it can show the UEB bold, italics, and underline signs. It can show the attributes, but not using UEB. And off the top of my head, I can't remember how I got it to do it.
That's okay. That's okay. I just thought it was worth. So it's probably not something you can do for UEB, even if their display is set to it.
Not using the UEB signs. It can show them, and it can show them like in the status cells and stuff. But not using the UEB indicators at this stage.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Christina. Good to talk to you. Take care. Okay, very last hand of the day is for Raj Mehta. So Raj, we have you.
Hi, can you hear me, guys?
We can.
I can.
Yeah.
Hello.
Fantastic. Hi, Matthew.
Hello.
Fantastic presentation. Really insightful. Thank you so much. I just have a slightly off-track question on fonts and attributes. When you have copied and pasted lots of text from different documents and so on, and you wanted to get them all look the same, is there a simple way of doing that?
off the record, what I would tell you to do is copy and paste the whole lot into Notepad, and then start a blank Word document, and then copy and paste again from Notepad back into Word, and that will clear everything. It will clear everything. It will clear all of the heading styles. It will clear absolutely everything. So then if you've got a document that's part formatted, you'll have to go and reformat it again. But when I used to do Braille transcription, and that's what I used to do to make sure that there were no stray attributes that came in, was just to copy and paste into Notepad and copy and paste it back. There are other ways through, like the font dialog box and stuff like that, but it's probably not as easy to describe as copying and pasting into Notepad and copying and pasting back.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Raj. Good to hear you. And that's just about it. Thank you, Matthew, for an absolutely amazing hour. I think we've all learned an awful lot, and I think certainly everybody will be testing out their newfound skills, I hope. So we appreciate your time, and thanks a million for joining us. I hope you might come back for session 2, part 2, maybe.
Well, it was certainly a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I think, let's try and collect some questions. If people can, I don't know, write to you, or if there's a Webinar Wednesday email address or something. And if there's enough interest in a particular area, then I'm happy to come back and do another one.
So you have the info there. If you want to get in touch with us, do send an email in, contact me, or send an email into sales@sightandsound.co.uk if you'd like another session like this, and we'll bring Matthew back in the next couple of months. Until then, stay well, everybody. Thanks as always to Sharon Lyons for her help. And we'll be back in July, on the first Wednesday of July, which is the 5th of July, for another session. Take care, and thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matthew.